Welcome, everybody, to this special session on Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 16. Now, when I did class on Friday, if you guys were present, then you'll remember that this was called the two paths. It was about the path of increase towards self-realization, towards union with our true self, and the downward path that leads to harmful action, harmful speech, harmful karma and rebirth, and basically takes you far away from your goal. But not without recourse. There's always room for redemption in this cosmological model. So in this chapter, Krishna starts off with a list of 26 ennobling dharmic qualities that are conducive to achieving self-realization, to proceeding on the path to more happiness, good karma, skillful action, all of that. And I noticed, because we read in our classes, we read the Eknath Elaswaran version, which is the great translation. It's very approachable. It's, he designed it to be as available as possible to any reader without having like a Vedic Hindu background. And however, we can get perhaps a more precise and insightful translation and commentary from Yogananda, the famous Paramahansa Yogananda, in this 2-volume set, which comes complete with verse-by-verse commentary. Now, when I read Yogananda's version, I realized that, it's not actually prose. He's not using prose in the beginning, like you might think from the version we usually read, where Eknath actually writes everything out. It's not just a list of 26 qualities. He makes it a beautiful, sort of readable paragraph. However, in real life, it's just the Sanskrit words one after another. And Yogananda translates them either as a single word or as a phrase according to what brings about the most understanding for the reader. And the commentary on these qualities, he explains each one of them. In the book, in the chapter, these qualities aren't explained. They are just, it's just part of the reading, and it continues on to, how not to be the ignoble qualities, the undharmic qualities that lead to ruination, let's say, to suffering. So these aren't explained, but Yogananda gives beautiful explanations for each of these 26 qualities in such a way that I was only able to share a few excerpts for you guys during our class on Friday. However, I think it would be great for everyone to hear the full thing, the full 15 pages of explanation, because again, I don't know how else to describe it other than like just imperative explanations for any spiritual seeker on these different concepts like forgiveness and nonviolence and fearlessness and tejas, radiance of character, all these terms that you will see shortly. So yes, it's 15 pages long, and we're going to start off with some chakra meditation to get into alignment with our higher selves, into alignment with the Satsang. And so let's do it. We're going to play a short 3-song meditation, and then after that, we'll get into the reading. And, feel free to raise your hand at any time if you guys have some kind of insightful addition that you want to add on to whatever it is I'm reading, because it's kind of boring if I'm just originally I was going to do this by myself. I was just going to read the chapter for posterity, for whoever wanted to have access to this book and doesn't have the the $26 it takes to get this 2-volume set. But since we have you guys here, feel free to make it more interactive if you'd like, or just sit back and take in the wisdom, take in the satsang. So with that, let's begin. I'll pull up the chakra songs for you all. All right, folks, I hope you had a good meditation. Now, let's dive into the material of the day. Yogananda's commentary on Chapter 16, which he translates as embracing the divine and shunning the demonic. So it's a bit more explanatory than the simplified two paths that Eknath gives the translation as. Again, the Sanskrit is Daivasura Sampadvibhaga Yoga. So Yogananda's is a bit more, I think, to the point. But the subtitle is The Soul Qualities That Make Man Godlike. All right, and again, today we're only going to go over the qualities that make man godlike rather than the negative stuff, the so-called demonic stuff that comes after this. All right, so we're going to start by reading Yogananda's list, verses 1 through 3, his translation, and then we'll get right into the commentary. Enjoy the ride, folks. Okay. Chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. The Blessed Lord said, fearlessness, purity of heart, perseverance in acquiring wisdom and in practicing yoga, charity, subjugation of the senses, performance of holy rites, study of the scriptures, self-discipline, straightforwardness. Verse 2. Non-injury, truthfulness, freedom from wrath, renunciation, peacefulness, non-slanderousness, compassion for all creatures, absence of greed, gentleness, modesty, lack of restlessness. Verse 3. Radiance of character, forgiveness, patience, cleanness, freedom from hate, absence of conceit. These qualities are the wealth of a divinely inclined person, O descendant of Bharata. And again, that's another epithet for Arjuna. He's often called Bharata or descendant of Bharata, which has to do with you guessed it, Mahabharata, the book that Bhagavad Gita is a part of. Anyway, let's begin the commentary. It goes like this. Divine spokesmen always speak in absolutes, not to describe what is beyond the aspiring devotee, but as a measure for striving. Chapter 16 cites the sattvic, or good qualities, that lead devotees to self-realization, and points out the tamasic, or evil tendencies, that unfit men to attain divinity. Stanzas 1 through 3 list 26 ennobling qualities as follows. And again, like I mentioned in our class and on Friday, I just want to point out before we continue that, Yogananda, he actually, English isn't his first language, of course. He came into America in the 1920s, I want to say, and he was using the parlance of the times, which was, very biblical, very King James-like. And so there is, in his lingo, in modern times, we might perceive it as having a bias towards the masculine lingo, but it's the way he means it is inclusive. It's not meant to be diminishing or exclusive or derogatory. It's simply that he is speaking the parlance of the times to reach the public in the way that they are used to, the way that they are used to communicating. And so just know that when he says words like men, he means it in the classic sense of like mankind, of humankind. I believe its root is like a Greek sort of thing, anthropos, but I didn't study the etymology too much, so that is just my guess. Just quick disclaimer, let us continue. Number 1, fearlessness, abhayam. Abhayam is mentioned first because it is the impregnable rock on which the house of spiritual life must be erected. Fearlessness means faith in God, faith in His protection, His justice, His wisdom, His mercy, His love, His omnipresence. The spiritually intrepid devotee is mightily armed against any foe that obstructs advancement. disbelief and doubt, delusion's first line of attack. Pardon me, let me let Vasana in. Okay. Delusion's first line of attack are summarily routed by undaunted faith, as are desires and all of their enticements that bluff with threats of unhappiness if not embraced. Fear robs man of the indomitability of his soul, disrupting nature's harmonious workings emanating from the source of divine power within. Fear causes physical, mental, and spiritual disturbances. Extreme fright can even stop the heart and bring sudden death. Long-continued anxieties give rise to psychological complexes and chronic nervousness. Fear ties the mind and heart, or feeling, he has in parentheses, to the external man, causing the consciousness to be identified with mental or physical nervousness, thus keeping the soul concentrated on the ego, the body, and the objects of fear. The devotee should discard all misgivings, realizing them to be stumbling blocks that hinder his concentration on the imperturbable peace of the soul. In olden times in India, and in Christian tradition also, it was customary for sages to seek solitary abode in the forests, deserts, or mountains for uninterrupted meditation. These remote areas, free of civilized invasion, were the natural habitat of such creatures as snakes, scorpions, and predatory wild animals. In India, even in this present age, we grew up with inspiring tales of eyewitness accounts of reclusive saints whose sole companions were cobras and scorpions, placidly seeking warmth against the saint's body, or fearsome tigers become pussycats. And who has not thrilled to the legend of Saint Francis of Assisi, who tamed the bloody lust of the wolf of Gubbio? Beasts are conscious of the divine vibrations emanating from saints, because God-knowing saints see the Lord in everything, not in imagination, but realization. They neither harbor fears nor arouse defensive fear in the Lord's creature kingdom. For the unenlightened, the best advice is caution along with courage. Fearlessness in spirit, without rashly exposing oneself to unnecessary risks or to conditions that may arouse apprehensions. Everyone is given ample opportunities without willfully creating them to demonstrate courage and prove the power of faith. Death is perhaps the ultimate challenge of faith in mortal men. Fear of this inevitability is foolish. It comes only once in a lifetime, and after it has come, the experience is over, without having affected our true identity or diminished in any way our real being. Illness, also, is a gauntlet tossed at the feet of faith. An ill person should try earnestly to rid himself of his malady. Then, even if doctors proclaim there is no hope, he should remain tranquil, for fear shuts the eyes of faith to the omnipotent, compassionate, divine presence. Instead of indulging anxiety, he should affirm, "I am ever safe in the fortress of thy loving care." A fearless devotee, succumbing to an incurable disease, concentrates on the Lord and becomes ready for liberation from the bodily prison into a glorious afterlife in the astral world. Thereby, he advances closer to the goal of supreme liberation in his next life. A man who dies in terror, having surrendered to despair his faith in God and the remembrance of his immortal nature, carries with him into his next incarnation that bleak pattern of fear and weakness. This imprint may well attract to him similar calamities, a continuation of a karmic lesson not yet learned. The heroic devotee, however, though he may lose the battle with death, yet wins the war of freedom. All men are meant to realize that soul consciousness can triumph over every external disaster. When subconscious fears repeatedly invade the mind, in spite of one's strong mental resistance, it is an indication of some deep-seated karmic pattern. The devotee must strive even harder to divert his attention by infusion of his conscious mind with thoughts of courage. Further, and most important, he should confide himself completely into God's trustworthy hands. To be fit for self-realization, man must be fearless. Okay, so that's quality number 1.
Mhm.
A lot of them are shorter than that. Some of them are just as long, though. But let's continue. Number 2. Number 2 is purity of heart. And as you notice, he does give the Sanskrit equivalent next to it, which is beautiful and very helpful for our studies. Purity of heart is sattva samshuddhi. Sattva samshuddhi. It's hyphenated. Purity of heart means transparency to truth. One's consciousness should be free from the distortions of attachment and repulsion to sense objects. Likes and dislikes for externals taint the heart with gross vibrations. The heart, or chitta, should not be influenced by the pairs of opposites. Only thus may it enter the divine bliss of meditation. Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." This is a quote from Matthew 5:8. Okay, quality number 3. As you can see, we speedily moved on there. Quality number 3 is steadfastness in seeking wisdom and in practicing yoga. And the short Sanskrit version of that is Jnana Yoga Vyavastiti. Jnana Yoga Vyavastiti. Okay, so this kind of steadfastness is essential for reaching liberation. In his daily life, the devotee should apply the guru-given or scriptural wisdom and should immerse himself in the peace born of the regular practice of yoga techniques. Wisdom guards the devotee, by right reason and perception, from falling into the pits of ignorance and sense pleasures. Number 4, almsgiving, dana. And actually, fun fact, this is what my dog is named after. I pronounce it Dana. My sister's actually the one who named her after the Buddhist word, though, Dana. But that sounds like our English name, Dana, so it's not ideal. Anyway, almsgiving, dana, or charity, is meritorious. It expands the consciousness. Unselfishness and generosity link the soul of the open-handed giver to the presence of God within all other souls. It destroys the delusion of personal ownership in this dream drama of life, whose sole possessor is the cosmic dreamer. The bounty of the earth is merely on loan to us from God. That which he has given into our keeping is judiciously used when it serves the needs and removes the suffering of one's self and others. The true devotee, spontaneously from his expanded heart, wishes to share with others his possessions, knowledge, and soul insight. His unselfishness is the natural outreach of those who love God and realize his immanent omnipresence. Jesus wept for the ignorant, the poor, and the afflicted because he saw God suffering in them. Those whose feelings have become universal with love and compassion give their lives and their all in service to God and his children. To bestow money on poor persons who will use it to injure themselves by buying liquor instead of bread gives encouragement to sin. Similarly, pearls of wisdom should not be cast before mentally rebellious and unappreciative men. But the discriminative devotee, who wisely shares his wealth, knowledge, and spiritual treasures to the benefit of those who are needy, worthy, and receptive, fits himself for liberation. Quality number 5, self-restraint, Dhamma. D-A-M-A, Dhamma. Self-restraint is the power to control the senses when they are excited by the pleasant sensations of sight, hearing, smell, taste, or touch. A devotee who is master of his senses is ready for emancipation. He who succumbs to temptations will remain entangled in sense objects, far removed from soul knowledge. Every indulgence in any form of sense lures reinforces the desire for that experience. Repetition leads to the formation of nearly unshakable bad habits. Number 6, religious rites or yagnyas, which is an important Hindu term. Religious rites are enjoined by the Vedas and other great scriptures. A devotee, according to his state of development, may perform the symbolic physical rite of pouring clarified butter into fire, or the mental rite of burning wrong desires in the flames of wisdom, or the yogi's spiritual rite of consuming human restlessness in the fire of soul ecstasy. In the ultimate, the whole of one's life should be a yajna, with every thought and act purified by a devout heart and offered as oblation to God. Quality number 7, right study of the scriptures, swadhyaya. And this is one of the yogic niyama we find in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Right study of the scriptures leads to emancipation. A true devotee does not suffer with mental indigestion, as does one who gorges himself on scriptural lore without understanding its meaning and without assimilating it into his life. Theoretical study is helpful when it inspires a devotee to practice the holy teachings. Wisdom thoughts are faithful guides and protectors when they become one's constant companions. In all ages, there has been conflict between theoretical knowers of scriptures, the professional priests, and men of true spiritual insight. Pedants who lack inner realization but who boast of their erudition are often jealous of and persecute the men of God who live truth. Thus, Jesus met opposition from the hierarchy of the Pharisees, and many saints in India have been ill-treated by learned pundits, as was the divine Sri Chaitanya. Redemption does not come from what one knows intellectually, but from what one becomes as a result of that knowledge. There must be a rational connection between one's learning and one's self, so that a truth becomes such an integral part of the being that it cannot be dislodged by contrary temptations or doubts. This is intuitional learning or realization. Okay, quality number 8, self-discipline, tapas. Once again, a very important yogic quality, part of Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Raja Yoga. Self-discipline, tapas, includes celibacy, restraint of appetite, and various methods of training the body to withstand cold, heat, and other discomforts without the usual mental agitation. If practiced with discrimination and right resolve, these mortifications help the devotee to attune his body and mind to spiritual vibrations. Self-discipline is different from self-torture. The aim of tapas is not served by startling exhibitions such as fakirs, which is these are ascetics in the Muslim or Sufi tradition, I believe. And yeah, they take on like severe sort of ascetic practices, such as fakirs on beds of sharp nails. The profound purpose of tapas is to change in man his bad taste in preferring transient sense pleasures to the everlasting bliss of the soul. Some form of self-discipline is necessary to transmute material desires into spiritual aspirations. By tapas and meditation, the devotee gives himself a standard of comparison between the two kinds of pleasures, physical and mental on the one hand, and spiritual on the other. A habitually lazy person who is forced to become a day laborer feels a bodily distress unknown to those who are used to hard work. Similarly, the devotee who compels himself to follow a course of self-denial feels physical and mental misery in the beginning. Ignoring the rebellion of his body-identified ego, he should gradually accustom himself to the strenuous life of a spiritual athlete. As he continues the purificatory actions of tapas, he finds not the torment he had dreaded, but deep peace and joy. When man savors, even once, the superior joys of the inner heaven, he realizes his past, his past misjudgment. He now finds himself overwhelmed with happiness. Human beings can never be satisfied, even by experiencing every possible sense delight, which they mistakenly pursue in the hope of finding their lost soul bliss. Austerity, self-denial, renunciation, penance, all are means, not ends. The real goal is to regain them through the infinite realm of spirit. As a poor man is glad to discard his rags when he becomes rich, so the successful God-seeker entering the world of bliss jubilantly casts away all shabby material attachments. Quality number 9, straightforwardness, arjavam, straightforwardness. This is a quality of honorable men. And let's just add in here, to refresh our memory, honorable men and women, honorable humans, okay, to convert this into modern parlance. This is the quality of honorable men and women. It denotes sincerity. The eyes that see God are honest and artless. He who is free from deceit may gaze on the utter innocence, and this is capitalized, on the utter innocence. A dissembler is out of tune with the universe, hiding selfish motives under a guise of altruism, making false promises, injuring others while pretending to befriend them. A hypocrite invites disaster from the cosmic law. The aspiring devotee strives to be free from guile and crookedness. To regain the sahaja or natural state of his true being, he makes himself as open and candid as the sun. Quality number 10, non-injury, ahimsa, everybody's favorite quality. This is one of the 5 yama in the Yoga Sutras. Non-injury, ahimsa, is extolled in the Hindu scriptures. One of the 10 commandments in the Bible is, "Thou shalt not kill," from Exodus 20:13. The prohibition refers to the wanton destruction of any of God's creatures, human beings, animals, plants. But the universal economy is so arranged that man cannot live without killing, in quotations, vegetables for food. Eskimos cannot live without eating seal meat. When it is an urgent matter of survival, a man is justified in saving his own more valuable life by killing fish and animals, which are lesser manifestations of divinity. Each day, millions of bacteria perish in man's body. No one can drink any liquid or breathe the air without destroying many microscopic forms of life. And then he puts in parentheses, and sometimes such organisms respond in kind. In the Mahabharata, ahimsa is referred to as virtue entire, in quotation, sakalo dharma. If righteousness be thus the criterion, neglect of action to uphold God's eternal laws of righteousness may be the cause of more harm than any non-malicious injury resulting from an act of obstructing evil. Method and motive are often decisive elements on the balance scale of divine justice. During a visit to the ashram of Mahatma Gandhi in 1935, I asked the prophet of nonviolence for his definition of ahimsa. He replied, "The avoidance of harm to any living creature in thought or deed." A man of nonviolence neither, and that's the end of the quote. He continues to say, "A man of nonviolence neither willfully gives nor wishes harm to any. He is a paradigm of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." And in the footnote, it continues the quote in full. "Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them." Matthew 7:12. And clearly that's the King James Version. Okay, quality number 11, truth. Actually, I'm going to take a quick water drink to, relieve dry mouth. Okay, cool. All these truth qualities got me having dry throat here. Okay, number 11, truth, satya. Satya. This is one of the other 5 yogic yama. Satya is the foundation stone of the universe. Quote, "The worlds are built on truth," says the Mahabharata. Men and civilizations stand or fall according to their attitude toward truth. An honest person is spontaneously admired by all right-thinking men. The Hindu scriptures, however, point out that a devotee whose ideal is truth should always exercise judgment and common sense before speaking. It is not enough merely to tell the truth. One's words should also be sweet, healing, and beneficial to others. Hurtful statements, however accurate, are usually better left unsaid. Many a heart has been broken and many a life wrecked by truths spoken by others inopportunely. A sage carefully watches his speech, lest he wound those who are not yet ready to hear and profit by his veracious observations. And like I said in our class, he says veracious here, V-E-R, not voracious with an O. Veracious meaning truthful. Okay, the Vedas mention 3 kinds of truth. 3 kinds of truth. All values pertaining to man and nature are relative truths. Vyavaharika. Vyavaharika. These influence human beings during the waking state, Jagrat, which is essentially changeful, ever in flux. Let me check the chat real quick. Oh, good. James left a link. Good. Okay, ever in flux. All values pertaining to man's ordinary dreams and sleep, swapna state, when he is in touch with his subconscious mind that conjures images in the form of astral phenomena, are imaginary truths. Pratibhasika. Pratibhasika. They have a certain validity, but only in their own restricted realm, which is far more fleeting, vague, and ambiguous than is the world of matter that man perceives in the waking state. During deep, dreamless sleep, sushupti, and in the samadhi, meditation of the yogi, man abides in his true nature, the soul, and cognizes absolute truth, paramarthika. Hold on, I'm on cat duty here. I gotta make sure he doesn't, climb on me while we're doing this. I can tell he's scheming in the corner over there. So paramarthika, this is the absolute truth. And let me know if my microphone gets weird. If I'm, hit it the wrong way or something. All right, so it is a mistake to think that ordinary persons are never in communion with God or the ultimate truth. If all men did not occasionally pass into the state of deep, dreamless sleep, even if only for a period of minutes, they could not live at all. The average person has no conscious recollection of his soul experiences, but as part of the universal whole, from time to time he must replenish his being from the source of life, love, and truth. By honoring the principle of truth in his thought, speech, and actions, a devotee puts himself in tune with creation and with the Creator. To a greater or lesser extent, all persons who meet such a saint are uplifted by his harmonious vibrations. The true man of God is freed from the painful dualities and contradictions of relativity and is fit at last to enter the final refuge of absolute truth. I love that you guys are in the same room now. That's hilarious. Okay, quality number 12, absence of wrath, akrodha. Akrodha. Absence of wrath is the quickest way to peace of mind. Anger is caused by the obstruction of one's desires. A desireless man has no anger. One who does not expect anything from others, but who looks to God for all fulfillments, cannot feel wrath toward his fellow men or disappointment in them. A sage is content in the knowledge that the Lord is running the universe, and never considers that anything has been done amiss. He is free from rage, animosity, and resentment. This is a world of relativity, and saints sometimes adapt their actions to circumstances. They may make a bold or even ferocious display of righteous indignation if such conduct seems likely to deter evil men from injuring innocent persons. But sages feel no hate toward anyone, however wicked or ignorant. A man of self-realization may simulate wrath for a long or short period of time, and then return in an instant to his usual calm and benevolence. The rage of an ordinary man cannot similarly be dismissed at will and in an instant. Only the purified heart of a devotee who is free from worldly desires is truly incapable of harboring anger. The most common disturber of the peace, so to speak, in families and among nations is wrath. A man prone to anger is shunned and often hated by his associates. Frequent outbursts of temper have a bad effect on one's health and often lead to violence. Yielding blindly to rage, countless men have committed crimes that led to prison or a sentence of death. For the sake of self-preservation, if for no higher reason, most persons try to learn prudence and control of anger. Okay, number 13, renunciation, tyaga. This is a key term from Bhagavad Gita, which again is what we are having a commentary on here. Tyaga, renunciation. And this is different than sannyasi. There's kind of like two terms for renunciation that we use in this book. Renunciation is the wise path trod by the devotee who willingly gives up the lesser for the greater. He relinquishes passing sense pleasures for the sake of eternal joys. Renunciation is not an end in itself, but clears the ground for the manifestation of soul qualities. No one should fear the rigors of self-denial. The spiritual blessings that follow are great and incomparable. To engage in actions without desire for their fruit is true tyaga. God is the divine renunciant, for he carries on all the activities of the universe without attachment to them. Anyone aspiring to self-realization, whether he be a monastic or a householder, must act and live for the Lord, without being emotionally involved in his drama of creation. Quality number 14, peace, shanti. Everyone's favorite. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. As they say, peace is a divine quality. A true yogi, one united to the peace of God which passeth all understanding, which is a quote from Philippians 4:7, is like a lovely rose, spreading around him the fragrance of tranquility and harmony. Everything in the phenomenal world displays activity and changefulness, but tranquility is the nature of God. Man as a soul has within himself that same nature of calmness. When in his consciousness, he can level and still the three mental states of upheaval, the waves of sorrow and gladness and the dips of indifference between them, he perceives within himself the placid ocean of spiritual soul calmness expanding into the boundless sea of tranquility in spirit. Quality number 15, absence of fault-finding and calumny. This is apaishunam. Okay, so absence of fault-finding and calumny. I have probably never used that word, but it means blame, I believe. Hastens one's spiritual evolution by freeing the mind from concentration on the weaknesses of others to focus wholly on the full-time job of bettering oneself. A person who, like a detective, is busy observing the shortcomings of others gets a false conviction of superiority. Either that he himself is free from those blemishes or is otherwise qualified to appraise others. A critical person rarely perfects his own life. A habitual critic is like a fly that sits on the moral sores of others. A true devotee, like a bee, sips the honey of good qualities from the hearts of his companions. Jesus said, "Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." And this is from Matthew 7, 1-5. And to translate that into English real quick, into modern English, basically he's saying what we would say in like the New International Version is, like, don't criticize the splinter in your brother's eye when you have a plank of wood in your own, which was an endemic problem that we find in, like, you know, the characters we see in the New Testament, like the Pharisees and all those folks. And to recap the first part of that about not judging, to translate that into more understandable English, yes, so don't judge others, lest ye be judged yourself. For to the degree that you judge others, you shall also be judged in like kind. And with the measure that you deal out, the measure of judgment that you deal out, you will receive the same measure of judgment. So basically, karma is what Jesus is describing there. As it says in the Old Testament, "The Lord saith, vengeance is mine," which basically just means, hey, I'm going to do that karma thing. So you guys just chill and be peaceful and good to each other. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the cosmic law. I got that. Okay, so continuing on here. Evil-minded disparagers, gossipers, and slanderers embrace the false notion that they can make themselves taller by cutting off the heads of others. On the contrary, there is no greater diminishment of character than in such behavior. Backbiters offend the God in others and in themselves. The virtuous unassumingly uplift others along with their own rise to heights above the small meanness of lesser fellow beings. A person who takes pleasure in slander and backbiting never knows the happiness of helping others by wise counsel and encouragement. Denunciation discourages and angers the wrongdoer. In their hearts, most men are aware of their infirmities and moral sores. These cannot be healed by caustic irritants of castigation, but only by the soothing salve of love. Nobody trusts those who spread evil instead of good, the gossips, the busybodies, the detectors of others' frailties. The Lord does not publicly expose anyone's shortcomings, but gives all men a conscience and the chance to correct themselves in the privacy of their soul. Jesus advised the would-be executioners of an adulteress when they were about to stone her. He that is without sin, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. That's from John 8:7. The accusers, remembering their own transgressions, slunk away. Great-hearted persons are ever ready, like Christ, to free the sinner by love and to spare condemnation. Okay, quality number 16. Compassion toward all beings. Daya, D-A-Y-A. So daya, compassion toward all beings, is necessary for divine realization. For God himself is overflowing with this quality. Those with a tender heart can put themselves in the place of others, feel their suffering, and try to alleviate it. By daya, the law of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and the stern exactions of karma are modified. If the Lord did not show mercy and give special amnesties and divine paroles from sin, his erring children would suffer indefinitely, life after weary life. Provided a man tries by self-discipline to remove the mountainous load of his past errors, God comes to the rescue. When he feels that his child is sufficiently repentant for or of his offenses, he destroys the age-old darkness of sin instantaneously by manifesting the liberating light of his presence. Gautama Buddha was an incarnation of mercy. It is told that he even offered his own life to save a goat that had been made ready for sacrifice. The king who was performing the rite spared the animal's life and became a devout follower of the Enlightened One. The human father, if he is wholly guided by the masculine principle of reason, will judge his son's fault according to the law. But the mother, filled with the tenderness of feminine feeling, is a symbol of divine compassion. She will forgive the son even if he is a murderer. Devotees find profuse remission of sins in worshiping God as the ever-merciful Divine Mother, instead of as the mathematically minded Divine Judge, who dispenses justice through karmic law. Okay, number 17. Non-covetousness, absence of greed. Aloluptavam. Aloluptavam. I've never seen that before. This is absence of greed is possessed by one who has mastered his senses and hence harbors no desires for gross pleasures and material objects. Absence of greed and envy are characteristic of true devotees, those whose minds are absorbed in inner joys. In comparison, the world has nothing to offer. And I'm going to mention this, I'm not trying to do too much commentary here, but an image of the Rumi poetry I'm reading just came to mind. Based on this phrase, absorbed in inner joys, I feel like that very much captures the ethos of Rumi's writings, at least the few poems that I've read thus far. Anyway, I'm not sure why that came up. But number 18, gentleness. Mardhavam. Mardhavam. Gentleness is characterized by spiritual patience. God is ever gentle with his erring children, and unoffended remains quiet while when they revile or ignore him. All men who are in divine attunement are kind and forbearing. A gentle person attracts friends on earth, and also, more importantly, attracts the Lord, the friend of all friends. A spiritually patient man does not feel ill will toward anyone, even the most evil. Number 19, modesty. Hri. Just Hri, H-R-I. Hri is the power to feel shame at any wrongdoing and to be willing to correct oneself. A complacent person is immodest and develops a superiority complex. Devotees who exaggerate their spiritual attainments desist from a deep search for self-realization. A humble seeker wins the attention of the shy and modest Almighty God. Scriptures teach that modesty about one's body is a special ornament to women. But when I see some of the coarseness displayed between young boys and girls today, I say modesty is a quality much needed by both sexes. Brazen behavior attracts wrong companions who satisfy their lust and then forsake the one they have wrongly used. The purity of modesty will attract its own virtuous kind. Modesty, as a sense of spiritual shame, is the mark of a sensitive person who easily recognizes his faults when they are pointed out to him. Being ashamed, he eradicates them. A man undeveloped in soul delicacy is rebellious, sarcastic, or indifferent when advised to mend his ways. The real devotee is always modest, aspiring to attain God by removing all his mortal imperfections through following the advice of his guru or other spiritual superiors. The ability to feel shame is an ennobling quality because eventually it leads the truth seeker to realize fully the humiliation of being karmically forced to take birth again and again in a physical body. This compulsory confinement is alien to man's real nature and gives offense to the illimitable soul. Quality number 20. Absence of restlessness. Achapalam. Achapalam. Well, actually, that's an aspirated CH. My apologies. Achapalam. Sanskrit has aspirated H sounds, consonant sounds rather, for those who don't know. Absence of restlessness, achapalam, enables one to avoid physical and mental roamings and useless activities. Nervousness and restlessness are usually caused by constant indulgence in sense pleasures, or by habitual negative thoughts, or by emotional problems, or by driving traits like worldly ambition. He puts driving in quotations because cars were relatively new in those decades, I suppose. So by emotional problems or by driving traits like worldly ambition. Restlessness is absent in God's nature. The devotee should learn to abhor mental and moral fickleness. He should keep his mind busy, not with aimless occupations, but with spiritual activities. And I'm recalling to mind just now that for sure Yogananda has in mind the passage in Genesis where it says God hath made man and women in his image. And that's kind of what he's getting at here when he keeps refraining. He keeps going back to this point of like, this quality is not in God's nature, this quality is. So restlessness is absent in God's nature. It's absent in our true nature. Okay. Quality number 21. Radiance of character, tejas. Tejas comes from the cosmic fire of God's supreme consciousness, the flame of awareness, within man and other sentient creatures. As vitality, tejas is present in all beings, and in the electrons and protons and atoms. His inexhaustible energy upholds the activities of the whole phenomenal world. Through long meditation on God, the devotee becomes permeated with the effulgence of this cosmic fire. Tejas bestows on man mental and moral boldness, and the radiation of irresistible confidence in righteousness that emanates from devotees who have felt within themselves the surety of the divine power. Such experiences develop a heroic spiritual nature. Many valiant saints have chosen martyrdom rather than renounce their faith. Divine radiance in the devotee is further characterized by a natural unfoldment of spiritual magnetism, an unassumed vibratory aura of goodness, and a quiet outer expression of deep inner joy. Quality number 22. Forgiveness, kshama. Forgiveness, kshama, in the man of God consists in not inflicting or wishing to inflict punishment on those who harm or wrong him. He knows that the cosmic law will see to it that all injustices are rectified. It is unnecessary and presumptuous to attempt to hasten its workings or to determine their form. Retribution at the hands of the immutable law of karma has for its proper and far-seeing purpose the eventual spiritual redemption of the sinner. This is not to say that wrongdoers should have no curtailment. Social structure demands constraints for its survival. Those whose duty it is to enforce just laws for the well-being of humanity act as instruments of karmic law. Their judgments should be meted out without malice or a spirit of revenge. Even if justice does not seem to prevail, the karmic law will not fail to balance the scale. A passage in Mahabharata is as follows: one should forgive under any injury. It hath been said that the continuation of the species is due to man's being forgiving. Forgiveness is holiness. By forgiveness, the universe is held together. Forgiveness is the might of the mighty. Forgiveness is sacrifice. Forgiveness is quiet of mind. Forgiveness and gentleness are the qualities of the self-possessed, self with a capital S, being possessed of one's true nature of self. They represent eternal virtue. End quote. When a weak man or person, I'm trying to substitute the word person here as much as I can. I'm not doing a great job, but I will start trying to. When a weak person slapped by a bully says, "I forgive you," and runs away, he or she is likely to be motivated not by forgiveness, but by cowardice. When a powerful person hurt by an enemy shows compassion and forbearance instead of crushing that foe, he displays real forgiveness. The spirit of forgiveness arises from long practice in spiritual discipline and from realization of our inseverable human and divine brotherhood. Just before Mahatma Gandhi died in 1948, he lifted his hands from his bullet-torn body to bestow on the assassin a humble gesture of forgiveness. Quote, all the sacrifices of his selfless life had made possible that final loving gesture. End quote. I wrote in a tribute to the Mahatma. Let me read that again because I think I messed it up. All the sacrifices of his selfless life had made possible that final loving gesture. Okay, Jesus, holding the power to summon to his aid more than 12 legions of angels, which is a quote from Matthew 26:53, did not resist arrest and crucifixion and prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. With divine insight, he was ever able to see man apart from his errors. Christ had perfect understanding that each human being is essentially a soul, a child of God, whose evil conduct is no expression of his real nature, but is caused by ignorance, knowing not. The dread, but not eternal, state of delusion, into which men fall when they forget their true identity. Hang on, let me take a sip of water here. Merci beaucoup. Let's continue. Quality number 23. Quality number 23. Patience or fortitude. Dhriti. So patience and fortitude enables the devotee to bear misfortunes and insults with equilibrium. Outward events cannot shake him, nor can occasional inner turmoil serve to deflect him from his chosen path and goal, self-realization. By stability, the God-seeker learns to adhere under all circumstances to noble activities in the outer world, and to retain the perceptions of truth that come to him during his meditations. He clings tenaciously to his experiences of soul bliss and never dims their reality by diverting his mind to lesser interests. This endless patience ultimately gives the sage the power to comprehend God. Dhriti expands the cup of his consciousness until it can hold within it the ocean vastness of divinity. Okay, quality number 24 out of the 26 qualities here. Cleanness of body and purity of mind, shaucha. This is one of the 5 niyama in the Yoga Sutras. Okay, cleanness of body and purity of mind. Shaucha is respect for the indwelling taintless spirit. It has been said that cleanliness is next to godliness. On waking in the morning, it is best to cleanse the body and mouth before meditation. Aside from obvious practical concerns, cleansing the body before meditation is a rite of spiritual respect, a symbolic purifying of oneself in preparation for worship. Slovenliness may distract the devotee's attention during his practice of spiritual exercises from the inner to the outer world. One who is physically clean and is also rid of the mental taints of uncontrollable desires and restless thoughts indeed invites the Lord to manifest himself in the purified temple of his life. When the mind is calm, it becomes a divine altar for the presence of God. Number 25, non-hatred. Adroha. Adroha, non-hatred, should be practiced by everyone. A devotee who feels malice towards others loses the power to see God in all. A yogi aspiring to realize spirit does not blind his vision by any thought or act of dislike or treachery, even against sinners or his self-proclaimed enemies. He strives to perceive in them the presence of the all-redeeming and loving God. As the Lord is free from hatred, he shuts out no one from the boundless sphere of his tenderness and omnipresence. Similarly, one who is aware of the divine in all creation cannot detest any man or feel any sense of disdainful superiority. And there's a footnote here that says, and this is a quote from William James, there is an organic affinity between joyousness and tenderness. Religious rapture, moral enthusiasm, ontological wonder, cosmic emotion are all unifying states of mind in which the sand and grit of selfhood incline to disappear and tenderness to rule. William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience, is the writing that was from. Okay, and I don't know if that's Yogananda's footnote or some later translator, some later editor. Okay, the last quality, 26, lack of conceit, na atimanata, na atimanata. Okay, lack of conceit. This signifies absence of excessive pride. The Lord does not harbor pride, though his cosmic possessions and powers are infinite. In humble concealment, he secretly works for man's salvation through the propelling power in virtuous actions and in the silent attraction of his love inherent in each soul. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, for the devotee may feel vain and self-satisfied, falsely assuming he is what he knows. There is a proverb that pride goes before a fall. A self-admiring person is apt to refrain from further effort. He falls into the pit of inertia, which not only prevents further progress, but also diminishes whatever physical, mental, and spiritual gains he may have possessed. Only he who is free from the sense of self-importance becomes richer and richer in spirituality until he is one with God. On the mountain peaks of pride, the mercy rains of God cannot gather, but they readily collect in the valley of humbleness. Such great analogies. Okay, and 2 more pages left. This is kind of a recap, a summation, a capstone. Okay, these 26 qualities are all divine attributes of God. They constitute man's spiritual wealth. A God seeker should strive to obtain all of them. Gotta catch them all. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. A God seeker should strive to obtain all of them. The more he manifests these virtues, the more he reflects the true inner image of God in which he is made. He ever holds before his aspirations the criteria of the supreme perfection. Christ said, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect." Oh, I think, let me read that again. "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect." Okay, I think they needed like a comma there or something. That's from Matthew 5:48. And the side note here, there's a fun little side like statement in italics. The more one expresses these virtues, the more he expresses the image of God in which he is made. Okay, that's just a recapitulation of what we just read. Okay, so continuing on here. The Lord is fearless, for he knows he is ensconced in immortal immutability. He is pure in heart, his immaculate feeling unswayed by whimsical emotions, likes and dislikes. He is the soul consciousness, the unity, yoga, and intelligence, wisdom, that is the foundation of being and becoming. As the source of all, he is charitable, the ultimate giver of all gifts. He perceives the realm of dualities through the senses of all creatures, yet transcends the senses, remaining immersed in the pure joy of his omniscient self. All activities of the Lord are yajna, the cosmic rites of creation, preservation, and dissolution, by which universes and beings evolve and are oblated back into the purifying spirit. And as you can see here, he's reiterating the 26 qualities, but in terms of how it relates to God's nature, our true self's nature. So God is the knower, knowing, and known. Himself, the universal scripture, articulated by sages and rishis, and inscribed in holy volumes for the soul awakening study of man. He is the epitome of self-discipline, symbolized as Shiva, the Lord of yogis, made divinely powerful by awesome austerity and meditation, ever contained in his own being in spite of his engagement in cosmic activities. The straightforwardness of the Lord is his nature of non-dissembling, uncompromising eternal righteousness. The Lord is Ahimsa, the shelter from all harm, in whom there is no intent to cause pain or injury to any being. Harm is the result of the misuse of free choice to identify oneself with the illusions of duality. He is truth, the singular reality, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new, blissful blessedness, behind all cosmic appearances. In him there is no wrath, no desire contradicted in his desireless self. The working of his laws are not punishments, but promptings of his love. He is the emblem of perfect renunciation, joyous in his own blessedness, non-attached and fulfilled with or without the objects of his Leela of creation. And Leela, that means, it's like a common, pardon me, a common Hindu term. I believe it means divine play, like the divine play of the universe as God. So with or without the objects of his Leela of creation. He is the ever tranquil, the unchanging, stabilizing peacefulness beneath the turmoil of relativities that play upon the surface of his being. The guileless Lord exposes no faults. Rather, he gives man the solitary confessional of his thoughts and conscience in which to analyze and correct himself, ere his own wrong behavior insinuate against him. It is the Lord who is the real sufferer in all beings. Therefore, he is the kindness of empathy, the infinite compassion upon whose mercy all beings may cast themselves. Though he is the creator of everything, he is non-covetous, giving over his wonders to the evolutionary working of his laws and to the free will innovations of his children, receiving only the token offerings that come perchance from wise and loving hearts. Were it not for the gentleness of God, his silent loving persuasion of involution that creates unity and draws creation back to him, the violent inharmony of vibratory repulsion would perpetuate eternally a chaotic state of existence. God is the paragon of virtue, modesty supreme. No act of the Lord bears taint of impropriety. Recollected in his bliss and wisdom, with no ruffle of restlessness, the inactively active Lord brings forth universes and beings, not out of agitated fickle fancy, but for a divine purpose understood by those who pierce the veil of delusion. God is omnipresent omnipotence, the radiance of divine power that bestows and sustains all consciousness and vitality. In his unconditional love for all of his children, the Lord is supremely forgiving, blessing not only according to the measure of their little store of good karma, but principally through the transcending power of his grace. Of the Lord's eternal patience, the scriptures sing, he is permanent, unmoving, the everlasting seer of all. He is immutable taintlessness, pristine purity, the incorruptible light of creation, in which dance the shadows of both good and evil. Yet they mar nor taint it not. As he resides equally in all, to the Lord none is hateful. He maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. A quote from Matthew 5:45. Sovereign of all universal universal realms, the Almighty Prideless Lord tempers his power with love and humbly abides as the servant of his kingdom, maintaining for the benefit of its inhabitants life, truth, beauty, and love. Amen. I feel like saying Amen. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. All right. Well, that concludes our reading. If anyone would like to raise their hand and offer insights or discussions or takeaways, or even just, store your power from the day, some interesting parallel perhaps to the material we just explored, feel free. And looks like we do have a taker.